Three Chimes, the Charm. Written and told by Kiefer Adams. Thomas was busy in the yard shunting troublesome trucks. But for once, it was not the trucks complaining, but James, who was nearby being fussed over by workmen. "Those silly things would push me into the coal hopper, wouldn't they?" he was saying to no one in particular. "Oh, come on, James," said Thomas. "Can't you go one day without your paintwork being just a little bit dirty?" "Can't you go one day without interfering in my business?" James insisted. Before long, James was clean, but a workman came down from inspecting his cab with some bad news. "A piece of coal has dented your whistle, James," he said. "You'll have to go to the works for a temporary one. It's not safe for an engine to be on the railway without a whistle." "I don't want a new whistle," protested James. "And we don't want a spoilt red engine who keeps saying he can do what he wants to," grunted Thomas, "but we don't get what we want." "Pah!" said James. "You're just jealous." "At least I'm not the one who was covered in coal," muttered Thomas. Luckily, James did not hear. He reluctantly headed off to the works. A call was made on ahead, so when James arrived, the workmen at the shops would be waiting for him. James felt rather uncomfortable when his whistle was removed from his cab roof. One of the workmen came forward with a strange-looking whistle. "What on earth is that?" exclaimed James. "I've seen those before," said the fireman. "That's a three-chime steam whistle, James. Members of Gordon and Spencer's class have these. They're powerful, deep whistles. Everyone will know you're coming straight away." But James didn't feel convinced. Soon, the three-chime whistle was perched on his cab roof. James felt rather silly. "Come on, old boy," said his driver. "We can head back to the coaling plant and pick up from where we left off." "I suppose," said James. Once he was checked over and his whistle was in place, James puffed nervously back to the coaling plant. He wasn't sure how his new whistle would perform. When James returned to the coaling plant, Murdoch and Neville were already there. They were waiting for Percy and Toby to prepare their trains. Neville was fast asleep, and Murdoch was minding his own business. A cheeky idea popped into James's funnel. His fireman had mentioned something about members of Gordon's class, or, more importantly, his famous brother Flying Scotsman having a whistle like this. So what if it was possible for James to try his luck? He closed his eyes, pumped his pistons, and blew with all his might. Neville and Murdoch were surprised.
"What on earth was that?"
cried Neville. "Oh, what a horrible noise!" exclaimed Murdoch. They looked and saw James laughing at his own wit. "Oh, ho, ho, ho!" he cried. "This whistle's fantastic! I'm going to use it for the rest of the day."
"But it's too loud,"
wailed Neville. "Quite right," agreed Murdoch. "If you're going to cause a racket, James, take it elsewhere. I was enjoying my peace and quiet until you came barging in with that thing." "Sorry to disappoint," said James, and he puffed cheekily away. "This is brilliant," he beamed. James was now happy to have a new whistle for a change. That afternoon, James had delivered his coal across the island and was returning to the big station. He would be on his way to Farmer McColl's to help Stanley deliver some animal feed. James beamed when he saw Gordon at the platform with the express. Emily was right next to him. "This is going to be good," James grinned. As he did before, he closed his eyes, pumped his pistons, and blew with all his might. "Oh!" groaned Gordon. "What on earth is that?" "It's just James, being more louder than usual," grunted Emily. "Oh, come on, fellas," said James. "What do you think of this? It's a free chime whistle. I know what it is, cut in Gordon. Flying Scotsman has one. So you admit it's a brilliant whistle? Asked James. Scotsman used his whistle with prestige, respect and care, said Gordon. He didn't swank around the railway blasting it because he liked the sound of it. If you're going to cause a racket, James, then go away. I agree, said Emily. Whistles are for safety, not for playing games. Spoil sports, snorted James. He puffed off to the farms, secretly feeling quite pleased with himself. James collected some trucks from Edward's station and made his way to Farmer McColl's. Stanley was already there. He had just dropped off sheep and chicken feed. When James arrived, he was surprised to see Stanley looking quite pale. What's the matter with you? Asked James. I don't think you should be raising your voice, James, said Stanley. Why not? Stanley's eyes pointed down the line. James could now see that in front of him was Farmer McColl's prized bull. It had escaped from its field thanks to a broken fence that Farmer McColl had forgotten to fix. The bull snuffed at James. Careful, called Stanley, but James glared right back at the animal. Have you got a problem? He asked. The bull reared its horns to James. Stanley was rather petrified as James puffed forwards. Don't you start with me, he cried. The bull looked like it was going to charge, until James gave a loud blast of his free chime whistle. It echoed across the farmland. When James had finished with his whistle, the bull had scampered back into his field. Farmer McColl came out to see what was the matter and noticed the broken fence. Well done, James, he said. I've been meaning to fix that fence all week. Now that bull will understand never to trot onto the line again. He hurried back to fetch his nails and some spare wood. That was incredible, James, said Stanley. But for the first time all day, James now felt that his whistle was not as exciting as he had hoped. That evening, the Fat Controller was giving Edward his last job of the day at the big station when a rather guilty-faced James puffed in. Hello, James, said the Fat Controller. How was your day? It was horrible, sir, said James. He told the Fat Controller all about his free chime whistle. Yes, Neville, Gordon and Murdoch have given me complaints about your whistle, the Fat Controller began. However, Stanley also popped through the station earlier and told me how well you coped with dealing with Farmer McColl's bull. I'm quite pleased with you, James. Well done. Thank you, sir, said James, blushing slightly. The work's also called as well, added the Fat Controller. Your old whistle has now been mended. I trust you'll be back at the works tomorrow to get it fixed. Oh, yes, sir, of course, sir. Thank you, sir, smiled James happily. He left the station to return to Tidmouth Sheds. He couldn't help but smile to himself. Well, it all goes back to normal tomorrow, he said. Might as well give it one last blast. James left the station, blasting his free chime steam whistle for the final time that day. But of course we know that James would not be the only engine to experience a free chime steam whistle. And I bet you all know who I'm talking about.